Tonight's quilt is kind of amazing because it comes boxed up with all the supplies that you need to make it, from the fabric to the pattern to even the rotary cutter. And if my quips weren't enough, you can see exactly how to make it step by step in the Startup Library quilting class with my friend and co-author, Krista Watson. We all know that quilters love Happy Mail, and this is the happiest mail of all because it has everything I need to make my quilt. And it's pretty. Who doesn't love pretty stuff? Okay, today I'm a quilter. Oh, and this is a class I was telling you about, the Startup Library. What is this? Oh, that's cute. Fun little poster. What will I quilt today? I think today I'll quilt a Friendship Stars quilt. Oh, and here's the pattern for that. This quilt is so bright and cheery, it's gonna be such a fun thing to make. Some batting, nice. Cute little tote bag, oh, that's cute. I can put my quilt top in here and take it everywhere and show people, even people that aren't quilters, because you know we all like to look at quilts, right? Backing, we'll be using that in a moment. Ooh, and here's the kit. Oh, there is just nothing like folded up fabric, just ready to be made into a quilt. And then the supplies, oh good. You know, rotary cutters, you can never have too many of those, especially when your kids lose them or you leave them somewhere, you know. A pin cushion and pins, ruler, nice. Ooh, it even has grip on the back. And a cutting mat. Fantastic, everything I need to make that Friendship Stars quilt. Okay, so I have all the supplies I need. Oh, wait, where's the wine? Well, I guess the wine doesn't come with it. We can supply that ourselves, that's fine. But the great thing about Blueprint is they have a box for every craft. So while I was at it, I went ahead and got a crochet box because I like to dabble with crochet a little bit. So I went ahead and opened my kit because let's face it, I cannot restrain myself from feeling the beautiful fabric. And I am just loving the beautiful, adorable prints. The little bitty flowers and the strawberries, and of course the gorgeous colors. Now we know I'm not always a huge fan of purple, but man, it's winning me over. Beautiful pink. Love that plaid. Oh, so nice. Such a good range. We have some nice teals and some yellows. Oh, this just says happiness all over it. And of course that big, beautiful red print. Well, I'm going to put some of these aside for now, and I'm gonna cut up my fat quarters in 3 different ways. So I have a 6.5-inch square, a couple of 5.5-inch squares. So the first group of fat quarters will be cut up this way, but the next 2 groups will be cut up slightly different. And what I love about the pattern is it has the cutting diagrams. I don't have to think this time of night, I can just follow the instructions and I'll have all the pretty pieces I need to make my quilt. After the fat quarters get all chopped up, it's time to cut up this beautiful background with adorable little cherries into the individual pieces I need to make my quilt. Now, if you happen to be watching and you're not a quilter yet, this is the perfect product for you. Maybe you're quilt curious and you're thinking, I don't know, maybe I want to try it out. This way, the box comes with all the supplies you need to get started. And then pretty soon, you will be completely obsessed like the rest of us quilters. So now let's take all our pieces and put them together to start making our quilt. So I have all the pieces laid out to make my first block. Ooh, actually, hold on. Oh, that's a different project. Let me move that out of the way. I don't know how those got there, so weird. It's okay, I promise, it's nothing serious. I'm just trying it out. But this is gonna be really cute when it's done, I'm just saying. Whew, sorry, I wasn't expecting that to happen. All right, back to the sewing of the quilt block that I have right here. And this is really kind of a basic 9-patch block with just a bigger center. So I've laid out my pieces in rows of 3, and I'm gonna sew them together in rows. So all 3 rows are sewed together, and now I'm gonna press it real quick before I sew the rows into the block. So I've pressed all the rows towards a darker fabric. That way when I sew them together, those seams will nest together just perfectly, or perfectly-ish, close enough. Anyway, I'm gonna sew these rows together and I'll have my block done. So this block is finished, and I'm piecing it one at a time so that you can see what I'm doing. However, in the class, Krista Watson has a brilliant tip for chain piecing the blocks, so be sure to check that out. Well, this quilt actually consists of 2 blocks, this one and a beautiful friendship star, so let me show you how easy it is to make that one. To make the friendship star block, I'm going to need some half square triangles, and I'm going to make them out of that bright cherry red fabric in the background. So I'm going to make them the good old 2 at a time way by flipping it over and drawing a line diagonally from corner to corner on the back of one of the squares. Then I'll place them together, right sides together, and then sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of the drawn line. A quick cut on the line, and I'll open it to reveal 2 half square triangles. All I have to do is press them, trim them, make 2 more, and I'll have everything I need to make my friendship star block. So I have all my pieces for my friendship star block, and it really goes together just like a 9 patch. I'm going to have my beautiful background fabric in the corners. The main difference is, though, that I'm using our half square triangles to be the points of our star. If you don't pay attention, you might get your points in the wrong place, and you'll have a star that doesn't really sparkle. I can't tell you how many stars have lost their points after a late night of quilting. And why is it when I put a block together wrong, I never notice it until it's already quilted, bound, and I'm showing it at Guild. And then somebody points it out for me. But you know what I say? Oh, it's supposed to be that way. Okay, so here we can see we have our beautiful star. Our points are all going in different directions. Not to make things confusing, but this is actually the clockwise star. You can tell by the way it looks like those points are spinning. I'm gonna make this, but I'm actually gonna make half the stars counterclockwise so that it looks like it's spinning the other way. But whether it's a clockwise or counterclockwise, it's still gonna be assembled the same way. I'm gonna piece the blocks into rows and then sew those rows together. One thing I want to point out is that as you're piecing the rows together, you might notice areas where your points don't come all the way to the end. And that's okay, it's supposed to be that way. That means that when I sew those rows together, then I'll have that perfectly pieced point, or close enough. See, just like I had hoped, that point comes perfectly to that area, so that's good. Of course, we know that if it didn't, I would be fine with just leaving it there. One last seam, and then the block will be finished. So this quilt is laid out with alternating blocks. And the first row is going to use our clockwise friendship star with our other pieced block. And I'm going to alternate between those. And I got a little excited and went ahead and pieced the rest of the row so you can see what it's starting to look like. So this is what's really cool about this pattern is where the background fabrics come together, it really kind of makes that whole area go to the background so that you can see the pieced block and that beautiful friendship star. Well, I'm going to piece this row together so that we can see the second row that has the counterclockwise stars. So the first row is finished, and I'm going to show you how cute the second row looks right next to it. It has all the blocks I need to make it look perfect. Wait, what is this? Oh, that's a different project. But it's still so soft. Okay, this is the actual second row. I keep getting my projects mixed together. And as you can see, the layout is slightly different. I'm starting with a pieced block, my 9 patch, and then going to my star. But then I'm going with the counterclockwise star, as you can see by the way those points are going. So it uses the same blocks, kind of. It's going to start with a 9 patch block and then go into the star. But this is that counterclockwise star that I was telling you about, and you can see the points are angling in a different direction. But you can tell how beautiful that looks, so let's get it together so I can show you what the whole quilt looks like. So the beautiful center of my quilt is finished, and look at those bright cherry colors. In fact, I love these colors so much, I'm super excited about the pieced border that's going to go around. So I've added a thinner border of the background fabric and then the pieced border, which is just random fabrics put together. I love how it's turning out, so I'm going to finish sewing this together, get it basted, and we'll get to the machine quilting. Since this quilt is made with bright, fun fabrics, I'm going to quilt an all-over design to give it a beautiful texture, and I want the quilting to show up just a bit, so I'm going to use a fun red thread. So let's get a little loopy on the quilt. I'm going to start by quilting a loop, a circle that goes around and continues on into a nice curvy line. Now, as I'm continuing quilting my loops, I'm going to make sure the line in between them is curvy as well. This is going to allow those loops to kind of blend in with the rest of the quilting. I'm also trying to quilt those loops in all different directions, really making that loopy line twist and turn and go every which way, because this is what's going to give it its beautiful all over texture. For the most part, I'm not worrying about keeping my loops perfect. I'm just trying to keep them somewhat the same size. That's going to help one loop from showing up more than the other. And as I begin to meander around the area, working my way in and out of those loops, I'm really focusing on not leaving any big gaps in between my quilting. So the number one thing to remember when machine quilting your quilt is we kind of get in this idea that we need to rotate the quilt as we're going. So when I'm quilting those loops, I might feel like I need to turn the quilt, but that's not the case. Instead, I'm keeping my hands stationary and then just moving my hands all around. That's going to keep the back from getting twisted and getting ruching on the back, or tucks as most people like to call them. If you're having trouble keeping your loops consistent, here's a handy tip. Give it a real-life reference so that you can have a real size to gauge it with. For instance, coins. If I want to quilt bigger loops, I can imagine that it's a quarter. And by keeping that in mind, that will help me keep them all somewhat the same size. My absolute favorite reason for quilting loops is that if my piecing isn't quite the way it should be, I can use those loops to avoid bulky seams. For instance, on quilts that have a lot of seams coming together in one point, instead of trying to quilt through them, I'm just gonna loop my way around them and keep on. So as you're quilting, if you find that you're getting kind of stuck in a rut of going one direction, instead of looking at these loops like individual loops, think of them as a line of loops. And if you can make that line go in all different directions, that's what's gonna give you the beautiful meander, that lovely all over texture. It's gonna make it look great. So I'm gonna continue quilting loops over my whole quilt until it's finished. It's so beautiful. It's what every quilter wants. It's a quilt in a box. Oh, wrong blanket. I mean, quilt. This is the quilt I finished. I had so much fun getting all the supplies delivered in one handy box, being able to piece the quilt with all that bright, beautiful fabric, put it together with those spinning stars, whether it was clockwise or counterclockwise, and then last of all, and maybe even best of all, getting to quilt it with the red thread quilting loops to give the quilt such a beautiful texture. Of course, I'm a quilter first and foremost, but I like to dabble with other crafts. Crochet has turned out to be quite a fun little hobby to have on the side. What about you? Even if you're a quilter, do you have other crafts that you'd like to try out? Maybe drawing, knitting, or embroidery? If so, a Blueprint has a starter box for you, and all that information is in the description box below. Well, I'll see you soon on another episode of the Midnight Quilt Show.